Welcome to Who's in the Bible, a podcast for kids. I'm Eric.
And I'm Lance.
And we believe that the Bible is the greatest book in the whole world. It's filled with amazing stories about interesting people, all working together to tell a bigger story, the greatest story about the most important person who ever lived, Jesus.
And we know that understanding more about the people and stories in the Bible helps us to know more about Jesus and what it means to be his followers today. And in this episode, we're talking about Joseph, part 2.
Part 2. Man, this is awesome. We had a lot happen last time, so just in case people didn't just listen to the one before, what happened?
Well, Joseph was the 11th of 12 brothers. That's a crazy story. You should go back and listen to those episodes about Jacob. But anyway, he was the favorite son. He got this special coat. His dad loved him more than he loved all his other sons. Not cool.
Nope.
And his brothers hated him as a result. So they decided one day, let's get rid of this guy.
So then they beat him up, toss him in a pit. Then they sat down to have some dinner. But that's beside the point. So they were like, well, we're going to just kind of like rough him up, teach him a lesson. But then they're like, we got a better plan. Let's make some cash off this. They sell him into slavery in Egypt.
That's right, to a group of people headed toward Egypt. So then he's purchased again in Egypt by this guy named Potiphar. Things seem to be going well until one day they don't. Joseph gets accused of doing something he didn't really do and was thrown into prison. So that's how the last episode ended. Joseph, a pretty good guy, is in prison. Terrible. Okay, but even though he was in prison, listen to what it says.
But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it.
That dude, he just seems to makes, when life gives you lemons, he makes lemonade.
He makes a pretty good lemonade.
Yeah, now so he's in charge of prison. That's pretty awesome. If you got to be in prison, be the number one dude.
Be the number one dude in prison. Yeah. So he's in prison. He seems to be leading in somehow. And then one day, like this really interesting thing happens. The king of Egypt, Pharaoh, throws a couple of his officers into the prison. For some reason, he's angry with them.
Yeah, the cupbearer and the baker. I would love to see a little snapshot of what happened that got those guys thrown in prison.
Yeah, what went down with the meal last night.
Yeah, did he choke? And then the cupbearer choked him with the baker made or something. And then he's like, where's my water? And then the cupbearer was like, not in the room.
Not ready. Who knows?
Either way,
it wasn't good. And so they end up in prison. And one night after they meet old Joe in prison, they have a really strange thing happen. Listen to this.
And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officer who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there's no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me."
So he's jumping onto this thing. He's like, I do the dream interpretation thing.
Yeah, so he's like,
I'm the guy.
Tell me. And so they do. They tell him his dreams, and Joseph says, let me explain to you what these mean, because their dreams weren't just random. They had meaning.
And I'm impressed because last time that he interpreted a dream, it got him tossed in a pit and sold into slavery.
Right.
So pretty bold, but I guess, hey, I'm already in prison. What else can happen to me?
Yeah, so he says, look, one of you, the baker, you're about to be executed in a few days. Off with your head. The cupbearer, this will all go away. You're going to get back. You're going to get your job back, your life back. It'll all be good. And so the baker was probably like, check again.
Let's find another guy in prison to interpret the dream.
Right. But Joseph's interpretation comes true. 3 days later, the baker is executed and the cupbearer gets his job back. But before they left, Joseph was like, hey, cupbearer, remember me, bro, when you get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because things are going to go good for you, and you should know I'm innocent, and I've been in here for years. Right.
Yep.
Do you think the cupbearer remembered?
No. Because he's probably got excited. He's out of prison. He's just forgot. He wants to forget those hard days in prison.
That's right. Those hard days in prison.
Let it go.
So 2 years go by. The cupbearer.
2 years.
2 years.
Wow.
That's such a long time.
That's a long time. For some of these guys listening, think about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
For you guys that are 9, you're like, oh my gosh, when I was 7, I was so dumb. Like that was 2 years ago.
A lot can happen in 2 years. And
Absolutely.
in 2 years, Joseph stayed in prison. The cupbearer never said a word to anybody else, which is a shame. But a turn of events happens. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, has this dream one night, and he wakes up, and listen to what it says in chapter 41, verse 8.
So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he was sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh.
You know who probably perked their ears up at this point?
Who's that?
The cupbearer.
You are right,
Because
sir.
he's always like, everyone wants to like probably get on Pharaoh's good side. He's the dude in charge.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, I got a guy.
Yeah, I know a guy. I met in prison.
I met in prison, which is always a great way to start any conversation.
Yeah, but he's like, actually, he says, I remember my offenses. He remembers he was supposed to say something he never did, but now's his moment to redeem
his
Joseph.
aha moment, like,
That's
oh, shoot, old Joe.
Old Joe. So he says, I know this guy, and he's the one that can help you.
Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of that you, when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not on me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer.
Old Joseph.
He's ready to go. Round 2.
They pulled him out of the pit. They gave him a shave and a shower.
And he's ready.
Standing before the king of Egypt.
Yep.
To interpret a dream. Man, interpreting dreams is a really strange thing.
It is weird.
Do you think you can interpret dreams?
I don't know. I would always take a shot at it. You know, I'd try anything once.
Well, okay, listen. I had a dream like 3 nights ago. It was really random. You want to give it a shot?
Hold on. Go.
Okay. I had a dream that I was playing golf, which is not something I do very often.
Golf? Okay.
And I had to borrow clubs because I didn't have my own with me, which again is strange.
Okay.
And I hit a golf ball. I was attempting to hit it over the water. And I hit the shot so poorly that it went straight for the water. But instead of going in and sinking, it skipped across the water. And it had so much spin, it made it went, like 40 yards onto the water and U-turned and came right back at me. And that's when I woke up.
You?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I got it. You are going to win the Australian Open.
That's what that means?
Yes.
I don't think you're very good at this.
Because the golf ball boomeranged.
It boomeranged.
And so, someone else is going to carry your clubs when you win as a professional golfer, the Australian Open.
Well,
I'm so proud for you.
Thank you. If that actually comes true, so many other things would have to happen. I don't think you're very good at this.
And now it's time for the question of the day. I'm Audrey, and I'm in the 2nd grade, and I want to know, how did Joseph know the meaning of Pharaoh's dreams?
Well, Audrey, that is a great question. Joseph didn't know the meaning of Pharaoh's dreams.
Because it seems like he did.
It seems like he did because he knew the meaning of the other people. Actually, he didn't. Do you know what he said both to the cupbearer and the baker and then again to Pharaoh?
I do remember him saying that it wasn't his to know.
That's right. But who knows?
God knows.
God knows. And that is how Joseph knew the answer. Because what we've seen all along in Joseph's life is that God was with him. God was with him every step of the way. And he turned toward God and they walked together. And through that, God gave Joseph this special ability to communicate the meaning of dreams, which again is not something that is a regular occurrence in life anyway.
Yeah, I mean, even though I took a shot at it, I feel like maybe I'm off a little.
Right.
Maybe yours was just some like bad McDonald's.
Right. Okay, so Joseph listens to Pharaoh's dreams, and Pharaoh talks about all these strange things that happened, and Joseph says, this is what God is trying to tell you. There are going to be 7 really good years where your nation, Egypt, has more food and jobs and money than you could even know what to do with. Yeah. And then after that, 7 years of famine. Do you remember what famine is?
We've had a lot of famines.
We have
in the Old Testament.
Some
I feel
famine.
It's like a common occurrence. It's like when there's there's no, the crops don't grow.
Right.
Like there's
sometimes
a drought.
Yeah.
And like, there's so the people are losing their jobs and they don't have money to live. And
That's
they have
right.
no food.
Yep.
Scary.
And they don't really know when that's going to happen, except Pharaoh's had a dream given to him by God that that's about to happen in 7 years. And so Joseph says, here's what you need to do, Pharaoh. God is telling you this. You need to prepare. You need to save up all the extra stuff because you're going to have 7 really hard years. And you need to put someone in charge who knows how to do that and manage everything. And if you do, you're going to survive those 7 difficult years of famine. But if you don't, it will be a terrible thing in Egypt and across all the land.
So Pharaoh hears this, and I don't want to assume that he like just chills out in a palace all day. I mean, he's running a country,
right?
So to get news like that, he's like, "That's a lot more on my plate."
Right. So
maybe I could pass this to somebody else.
Well, listen to what he said.
The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all of his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring in his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him in garments of fine linen and put gold chain on his neck.
He just got ultimate Egyptian swag.
That upgrade to the gold chain.
So from like in the pit to the gold chain, number 2 in charge of the whole country.
The whole country. All on the same day. That's wild.
That is a heck of a day.
Yeah. And what's crazy about this is God has been with Joseph the entire time, preparing him for this moment. And now he's the second most powerful person in the most powerful nation at the time, right? And so he does exactly what he said he was going to do. He manages for 7 years the storage of all the excess and puts systems in place. Like he does a really good job. And then you know what happens after 7 years?
Here comes that famine.
That famine.
Yep.
Famine season happens. And so after a couple of years, people across all the neighboring countries are experiencing the famine and they begin to run out of food. And what do you think those people do when they have nowhere else to turn?
They probably going, well, it looks like Egypt is doing just fine.
That's right, because Egypt was doing great thanks to Joseph's leadership. And you know who lived in a neighboring country?
I think his family, Joseph's family.
That's right. Remember those bros and his dad and all the moms?
Yep.
So Jacob sends his brothers. He says, look, we're out of food, but Egypt has food. I need you to go get some for us. And so the brothers travel to Egypt. Now listen, there's a lot to this story. You and your parents, if you're listening, should take time to sit down and read. There's so many back and forth trips between where they lived and Egypt, but listen to this. Joseph's brothers one day are bowing down before him because he's the one in charge of Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Where have you heard that before?
Yeah, I think it was in the previous dream that he told them about that got him so mad to begin with.
Yeah, back when he was like 17.
Yeah.
And it's true. They're bowing down before him because he's the one with all the power. Crazy how that came true. Now listen. One day Joseph, they didn't recognize him though because he looked like an Egyptian.
Yeah. He might have had the coat of many colors back then, but he didn't have the gold chain.
That's right. That gold chain.
From the coat, gold chain.
And the Egyptian clothes and, gotten older.
Probably looked awesome. Yeah. And he's gotten older. He's no longer a teenager anymore.
Right. So one day he pulls them aside and he reveals, he's like, guys, it's me, Joseph, your brother. Can you believe it?
Man, that is probably like when we were talking about this, it made me think of like on that show, The Masked Singer.
Oh, yeah.
When they like, you've been hearing this person sing and then they get voted off and then they take their animal head off or whatever. And everybody's like, oh, wow, it's,
someone
famous person who was already famous and now they're more famous. But so I'm guessing when Joseph revealed himself, it was not an excitement like, oh, wow, it's Joseph. We're saved.
You're right. In fact, it's the Bible says that the brothers were scared because they realized he's the guy with all the power and he has good reason to bring revenge to them.
Yeah.
But what do you think he does?
He has mercy.
That's right. Joseph, he's still being led by God. He's still a man of God. And so he doesn't respond in revenge. Actually, he says something really cool. Listen to this.
So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am the brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors."
Super cool.
So God still has a plan to still keep with his promise that he's had all along.
That's exactly right. You see how all of the things that we've been reading in Genesis are coming down to this moment where God has worked in Joseph's life. Even though bad and terrible things happened, he had a plan to get Joseph to Egypt because God knew about this famine, and that eventually he wanted this whole family to move to Egypt to be saved from the famine. And God worked even in the midst of bad things because this family and these people would be part of God's covenant promise to be a blessing to all families of the earth.
Well, you've been listening to Who's in the Bible, a podcast for kids brought to you by Clear Creek Community Church. Continue the conversation with our free parents guide at clearcreekresources.org.